So thank you, friends, for joining me here in this guided Quaker meeting. We haven't tried this before, so let's see what happens here and what we're led to share together. So this is a guided Quaker meeting, which is a little bit different, a little bit more structured than we are used to in Quaker meetings. And the image that I want to give you all is of a lake. I was sat around a lake. And to begin with, who knows what you've all been doing before you've arrived here? The waves on that lake, might be quite choppy. You might be quite unsettled. You might be a bit stressed about what's going on for you. And this is just an invitation to join us around this lake and just be in the stillness with each other as we go through a guided experience where I'm going to help us all settle down. So the time we're going to spend is going to be in 4 sections. First of all, we're going to center down into the stillness together. Then we're going to open our hearts to God. Then thirdly, listen to the Spirit. And finally, faith into action. And as you can see, we have some friends here with us to help us in this. So please just take some time just to settle down. Make sure you're comfortable and breathe, relax. And I want to thank you so much for being with me in this experiment. And as we try to share a Quaker experience together. So let me come to each of the friends here in turn. Peter, can I come to you first? Thank you so much for joining me in this experiment. Can I ask what made you say yes to joining me here? This is a bit of a brave step. It's an unusual thing. What made you say yes today?
Well, thank you for inviting me, Emma. I have to say that when I first received the invitation, I was a little bit hesitant. That was my initial reaction. But as I reflected on it further, and as I watched the explanation that you shared, it felt right, and any concerns that I had were allayed, and I'm really glad to be here.
Great. Well, I'm so glad you can join us. Thank you very much for being here. Let's come to you, Ruth. Thank you so much for saying yes. Why did you agree to join this today?
Glad of the leadings that you've been following, which have been really refreshing for me. And so it was natural to say yes to this
Well,
and
that's great.
support you.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your support. It's lovely to have you with us. And Roy, thank you for saying yes. What made you decide to go along with this idea today?
Well, one of the reasons, Emma, is the fact that I've known you for a long time and I trust your judgment. I wasn't sure that I was the right person, but I thought that if you thought that I was the right person to help with this, then maybe I was the one who was missing something. So that was part of the reason. The other part of the reason is that I do think we need to experiment with Quaker worship and try to present it in as many ways as make it approachable to people as we possibly can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for giving this a go today, Roy. And we're just going forward in trust, aren't we? So let's center down together then. You can imagine the lake before us. Maybe already the waves are smoother. Maybe you can begin to see the surface of the water now is settling into a stillness. And what we try to do in a Quaker meeting is to deeply listen. We're listening to the silence, but beyond, we're listening to each other when we speak. We're listening to our own hearts. And one of the things we do is we wait after we have heard a contribution to let that settle. So again, the image you might think of is a pebble that we throw into the lake. And the surface of the lake has become completely calm. When that pebble lands in the water, it makes some ripples and a splash. And then we wait. And the ripples slowly move out to the edge. You'll notice that every contribution we can deeply listen to the guidance and the message. And return to a place of calm to wait. So that has been about 10 minutes of us centering down into the stillness. Let's move now into opening our hearts to God. I'm going to read a small section from our advices and queries. This is from number 3. All of us need to find a way into silence, which allows us to deepen our awareness of the divine and to find the inward source of our strength. Seek to know an inward stillness, even amid the activities of daily life. So we're going to leave some space now in the silence for the next 10 minutes. And Peter is going to give us some spoken ministry if he feels led to do so.
On a day like today, when the sun is shining and it's nice and warm, I like to go for a walk around my neighbourhood. And it sometimes happens when I'm out on the walk that all of a sudden I become aware of birdsong. And it's not as though, I don't think it's as though the birds have just suddenly started to sing. They weren't singing before. But rather, I didn't hear them because I was caught up in my own thinking, in my own inner dialogues. I wasn't fully present in the moment. My mind wasn't sufficiently still, and the sound of the birds passed me by. And I'm wondering if perhaps it's a little like that with the promptings of love and truth in our hearts, which the first of the Quaker advices and queries encourages us to take heed to give careful attention to. If I'm not present in the moment, if I'm not stepping outside my kind of the thoughts that often whirl in my head, then I won't necessarily be aware of those promptings of love and truth in my heart, much less able to act upon them. So it feels to me important that I find a practice, a way of dwelling in that presence, being fully present in the moment, so that I can sense those inner promptings. And just this week, because I'd noticed that sometimes I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be thinking about some of the problems that are going on in the world. So I've done my own little experiment, and I've started to just to listen to a short recording, a podcast, just to help focus myself and to silence that inward chatter. And it's made a real difference to my mornings and to how present in the moment I am. And hopefully the more present I am, the more open I will be to sense those promptings moment by moment, whenever they may erupt into song.
So let's move now into our third period of time, listening to the Spirit. And the small section of advices and queries. Number 1, take heed, dear friends, to the promptings of love and truth in your hearts. Trust them as the leadings of God, whose light shows us our darkness and brings us to new life. Now let's settle now and wait again for Ruth, who will offer us some spoken ministry.
When we come to worship, we bring ourselves. Sometimes we can be very full, and whatever we bring is welcome. But we're listening for a guide that was here in the very beginning, a guide that will be forever present, a guide that's as close to us as our in breath and our out breath. It's fine to bring heaviness, sadness, any feelings here. Everything is welcome here. We do this worship together, which helps us listen for our guide. Our guide has special messages for us individually, and when we can quieten down, we may get some clearness. Just like in the book of Job, chapter 40, Job was quite full of himself, and right towards the end, chapter 40, 41, 42, God answers him. Job finally quietens down and is ready to listen. So this is what we try to do. It's not easy, and we can ask for help from our friends as well if we're struggling. And there are elders that can help too. So you're not on your own, and within the worship, it's a wonderful communal worship. So when you don't feel strong, somebody else will be an open channel, and that's the beauty of gathering together to listen to God. And we use other words as well, like seed, light, bright morning star, fountain of love. I am. Jesus. over the hen.
So we've spent 30 minutes together in listening and waiting. Let's move into the final period now of faith into action. Advices and queries 27. Live adventurously. When choices arise, do you take the way that offers the fullest opportunity for the use of your gifts in the service of God and the community. Let's wait now, and Roy will offer some spoken ministry when he feels ready.
I was born the year after the Second World War ended. I became an adult, at least in the eyes of the law. I'm not sure I reached maturity, but I became an adult in the swinging 60s. I remember sitting in front of the television, watching the Beatles on that first transatlantic link, singing, "All You Need Is Love." And that's what we thought. A lot of us. A 3-minute pop song would transform the world. We thought it was going to be easy. After all, everybody wants love, don't they? Well, yes and no. Because there are many people that feel threatened by love. It's not surprising that Jesus said to his followers that they were blessed when people would persecute them for the sake of the embodiment of love, Jesus himself. Because that's just what they'd done to all the prophets before them, who had spoken out about what was wrong with society. They would be in good company. Since those years, I've meditated upon how we do try to bring about God's way for the world. If across in the 1960s we'd looked across the Atlantic Ocean and seen the struggles of the civil rights movement to bring about a more just and loving society, and if we'd then started to think and research about what had led to that civil rights movement in the first place, and the theology and the thought and the times of protest and the actions that people had taken and the changes in the law that had already come about before the civil rights movement got going, then we might have understood that preparing for a more loving world takes a lot of effort and time and trouble. And there will always be resistance from people whose interests they think are threatened, or their positions of privilege are under attack. That's not a reason for not doing it. But we do have to accept that when our faith in God, our faith that the world requires of us to work for a better future, when that calls us to action, it can be joyful, but it can be painful. Jesus described the pathway as being a narrow one, not the broad way that everybody else follows, but something that's difficult to see, hard to discern. But when we do, when it's presented to us and we find the gates to that narrow way, after all of the preparations that we have done, we do find that way opens and that we can make real changes that help to bring about God's way for the world.
So, friends, that's been 40 minutes together in stillness. Let's just hold that stillness for a little while longer while we see what that's been like for each of you. Peter, let's start with you. That's been an unusual experience. We don't normally do it like that. What did you make of that today?
It's a lot to do with trust, and also perhaps kind of expectation. If we trust that spirit, inner guide will speak to us, then it may be that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we trust, the more we expect, the more likely that is to happen. Perhaps I did. It's very rare in meeting for worship that I feel that kind of physical inner pounding, and I don't tend to speak in a meeting for worship unless I get that sense that there's something that needs to be said. And I was I noticed that pounding today.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being with us. And Ruth, what about you? What was that like for you?
Very refreshing. I love worship, so it's lovely to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And Roy, how was that?
I found it very profound, and I'm very grateful for the words that Peter and Ruth offered. I know of friends who find online worship something that they are suspicious of. And certainly it's different from meeting together in person. But I feel that it's a different valid form of worship. And if it can be helpful in helping more friends find out about the Quaker way of faith and what it stands for, then it must be a good thing.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And it's been wonderful to try this out together today. Thank you, friends.
Thank you for organising it, Emma.
Thank you, everyone.